Welcome to Merryfield's Gardening Advisor, brought to you by the experts at Merryfield Garden Center. Join us as we discover beautiful plants, new trends, and exciting ideas for your landscape. So let's get growing together. Merryfield's Gardening Advisor, bringing out the best in your garden.
Good morning, everybody. My name is David Yost, and joining me today is Karen Rexroad.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Now, Karen was with us, what was that, just 3 weeks ago?
Mother's Day.
4 weeks ago? Okay.
Mother's Day show.
Well, we had so much fun. We're back again. Karen's a perennial specialist out at our Fair Oaks store. I know many of you have been by there to visit her, and I hope you continue to come out there and see her.
Yep.
Yeah. So before we get started here, I want to say, give a quick shout out to Debbie's away for the weekend. She's with her daughter, Sarah Cap. They're down there at the Special Olympics representing the state. So I want to say good luck for your bowling team, Sarah, and happy birthday. It was Sarah's birthday. It's always a big event for her.
Happy birthday.
So that gives us an opportunity to be with you this morning. And what are you going to be talking about today, Karen?
We're going to do something a little unusual. We're actually having a show that has very few flowers. It's mostly about foliage and contrast in foliage, which I'm very fond of, and I talk about it a lot when I'm at Merrifield because it's sort of a low maintenance way to garden. It's something that doesn't require a whole lot of deadheading as far as the flowers come, the flowers go. It's more about the leaves, and we're going to talk a lot about contrasting foliage, and we're going to talk about my black garden. I call it my black garden, but it's really a garden with very dark foliage plants like dark purples, dark reds, you know, things like that. And I've been doing it for 7 years now, and I love my black garden. So we're going to take a visit to my black garden.
Oh, I think it's going to be a lot of fun, as we call it, show without flowers. Imagine that, doing a gardening show without blooms. It's going to be fun.
Right. Different.
Yeah. But, yeah, I agree, Karen. I've mentioned it several times. I was at class one time, and they said, hey, when they're designing their garden, they really look at the leaves, the color and the texture and the foliage, because said, hey, if that works, if you get good contrast there, then the flowers just kind of almost fall into place on their own.
Right, yes, I agree, yes. Yeah. But, you know, really for low maintenance, I mean, this is the way to go. We talk about shrubs being low maintenance, but you can do perennials and even add tropicals and annuals and have a very nice low maintenance summer garden without the, you know, the necessity of taking care of dealing with all the flowers. So.
But we all love color, so we're going to figure out how to work all this together, and we'll start with a couple pictures just as examples of what we're talking about today.
This is a garden that's out in Hume, and it's a friend of mine, not in Hume, in Marshall, Donna Hackman's garden. And what struck me with the layout, and she does a very good job of putting plants together, was the Carex Evergold, which is at the bottom right, and it's such an elegant plant, and it's a perennial grass for shade, and it's evergreen, which is very nice, and it's variegated. But what struck me, at least in this layout, was the impact that one plant has in that entire scene. I love that grass because it's very clean, it has a very round shape, and its impact, you know, that one splash of light color in all of that green, to me was just said it all. And like I say, you know, and said before, the maintenance now is going to be diminished a great deal because you're really looking at a lot of different kinds of leaves and contrast in foliage.
Yeah, say beautiful composition and not a single flower.
And not a single flower. And this is another example of the same style, and this again is in Donna Hackman's garden. So the boxwood is what's in the center, and that's the variegated leaf boxwood, which is Buxus elegantissima. And then beside it, to the left, is this little ajuga called chocolate chip that has the dark kind of leaf, which we will talk a lot about in the show today. So it contrasts very nicely with that variegated leaf, and then to the right is that little miniature hosta with the yellow leaf. And so you have three plants that you're growing as contrasting in foliage over everything else, and that the only requirement there as far as the maintenance would be to take the flower stalks off the hosta. But what a great little vignette to come upon in the garden, and not, you know, and know that you have a lot of contrast, but you don't necessarily have flowers.
Yeah, I was looking at it, reminded me in my front yard, I use the black scallop ajuga with the variegated iris. in there to get the same effect.
Right. The juccas are great for that. I mean, black scallop's a lovely plant.
Yeah. And I put that out in the front of my yard because all the dogs walk by there and trample everything, peel and everything. So now I found something that's actually surviving.
Well, good.
Good.
We're glad when that happens.
All right. And I think we got one more picture here I want to show you also.
Yeah, and this picture is up at Chanticleer Gardens in Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia. So what you're seeing are Laeatrus flowers have passed, and now it's just the seed pods, which we like to leave because the finch love to eat the seed. Then the two plants that are giving you the color, the pink and then the sort of whitish pink in the foreground, those are both grasses. The one in the back, the very pink one, is Muhlenbergia. And then the one in the front is Aragrostis, which is a native that grows literally all over Virginia. You see it in the fields. So this is later in the year, maybe August, September. But I love how to me, it's just a stunning threesome with the vertical seed pods that were left behind, and then just that froth of those grasses. I find this to be, this required literally no maintenance. Everything just came together and flowered. At least the grasses are flowering, but it will stay that way probably for months with the grasses.
Right. And Karen and I were just talking before the show how important it is to have interest and enjoy the changes as we get to experience all the seasons that are there.
Right.
So I thought that was a great example of that.
Yeah, yeah.
Good. Well, like I said, we love to experiment with color. We all love color in the garden. We're going to show you specific examples of that throughout this morning. Later in the program, we will be taking your phone calls, but that's going to be towards the last two segments of the show, so we'd love to hear from you there. And also, I want to remind everybody that this weekend is the weekend for the Rose Show. So this is at the Fair Oaks location, the Arlington Rose Foundation. I think it's their 50-something, maybe like 58.
Yeah.
Wow, can you imagine that? They've been putting this show on. But they work hard at that. They've been there setting up all the tables, starting yesterday, getting all the vases prepared and everything. So we hope that you come down and take advantage of that sometime this weekend at our Fair Oaks store. The Rosarians are going to be there, so they're really the experts in this. These are people who are just fanatic about growing their roses and love to share.
And it's a beautiful show to go to.
Nice.
I love to go and look at all the different roses and everything from miniature to hybrids to everything. It's lovely.
And they've actually added a photography competition into it as well.
Can't wait for that.
Yeah, you'll have to take a minute to pop up there and see what's going on there.
I plan on it.
So we certainly hope you'll come down and take advantage of that. So here we want to just kind of tease you with a couple ideas of some specific plants you can use to create these dynamic color combinations with different foliage effects.
Right. This is actually the tender perennial grass, the pennisetum, the fountain grass. And I use it in my black garden every year. And then the plant that's below it is Alternanthera, which these are both going to be tender. These are something that you would need to plant every year. But once I plant my black garden, which I've just finished doing again for this year, you really can kind of walk away and then just enjoy it for the rest of the year. It's important to really think about the foliage, because if you do concentrate on black flowers, you basically end up with another garden that's green with black flowers. So it's not the impact that I originally wanted when I did my very first black garden.
And then one more before we go to break.
And then there's that lovely contrast. Now, a lot of people think to themselves, I don't know that I want to do dark foliage because it sort of recedes in the landscape, but it's lovely to contrast against things like this xanthosma, which has that chartreusey yellow leaf. So when you put something like that together, oh my, it's just absolutely just stunning.
It is. I tell you, that's got to appeal to you. Okay, well, we're going to take a quick little commercial break, but I hope you stay with us because when we come back, we've got other exciting ideas for how that you can add color into your garden. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Merrifield's Gardening Advisor. Karen Rhodes here with me this morning, and we're talking about color, specifically dark colors, or what she even calls her black garden. And how we can bring this element into our landscape. So, Karen, I'm just going to let you take it from here.
So we're going to look at a bunch of pictures of plants in my black garden. And my black garden was something that the concept came up when I saw a magazine spread in 2006. And then the next year I actually planted my first one. So this is my 7th year. And this is an example of the colocasia leaves. I kind of laid them out so that I could get, or even show, how big they can get and compare them to each other. And the one that's on the very bottom, which sort of has a matte leaf, is Maui Magic. And then the shiny one that's above it, that's so large, is Hilo Bay. And then on the very top, that's 2 leaves off of a species called Colocasia illustris. What I wanted to point out about the bottom 2 are they have Hawaiian names, and they're hybridized by this one gentleman by the name of John Chu. He's a hybridizer in Hawaii, and what he's working towards with his hybridization of these colocasias is to get them to take all of their energy and put it only into the leaves and not spread with rhizomes, which is what they like to tend to do. Take up more ground, and then the leaves tend to be smaller. So it's, if you're shopping for them and you do want these bigger leaves, and that Hilo Bay leaf was 28 inches across. If you want to get these kinds of big leaves, look for his varieties, which all will have a Hawaiian name, like we see Maui Magic there, and Hilo Bay. And then with our next picture, we're going to look at some more examples of the same kind of concept in the garden, where the one colocasia that's right up front to the left is called Black Ruffles, and it's really, really a lovely one with a very matte surface to it. And then illustris behind it. And you see that fountain grass again. I use that fountain grass every year, and it's really considered more red, but it looks very nice in the black garden, and it's a different, kind of a texture when you put it with these really, really big leafed colocasias. And then with our next picture, we have illustris. And illustris is a species. There's no hybridization there, and it's just got that lovely veining and tends to stay a little bit lower, but it's just a phenomenal plant, and it works very well. I've really come to where I have my favorites when I do this black leaf garden as far as those colocasias go. And I love taking pictures of them. With the next picture, I have a photograph of a variety called Black Magic, which is one of the oldest, dark leafed ones. And at different times of the day, they pick up light differently, and it's just so much, fun to go out at different times of day and photograph them. This is like the underside of the leaf, and I just love the way it, reflects the sunlight on the upper part.
Yeah, I was shocked to learn how many varieties there are of these. A friend of mine that's with the Tropical Plant and Palm Society shared a lot from her garden, and I had names like Coal Mine and Mickey Mouse and Black Diamond, and I had all these beautiful colocasias she'd shared with me. Last year, they're all history now, though, because I really didn't do a very good job at storing them.
Right.
So I don't know if we mentioned, but these are all tropical plants.
Yeah, they're very much so.
So I was wondering, what do you do to get them through the winter?
I've tried a lot of different things, and I will honestly say the easiest one is to actually keep them as a house plant and bring them into the house. Keep them in a container. When I dig my tubers, which is what they are, and I dig them for colocasias, alocasias. I dig my tuberoses. I dig a lot of my garden has bulb bases. I will do a sulfur vermiculite mix and coat them with that to store them. But I find that the black colocasias are the hardest. There's just no doubt about it. I always struggle to get them to come back after my various storage techniques. So I go back and say, the easiest way I find is to keep them containerized and keep them growing and actually bring them in the house and keep them as a house plant. And that works the very best for me.
Yeah, I have very limited space, so that's not an option.
Then,
and I had this idea that maybe if I buried them all in a mulch bag and kept them on my front porch, they'd be insulated. But
no,
I can tell you it doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
No.
Yeah.
But so I've decided the best thing to do is just come in and buy new plants each year.
Right, and they're, if you get them when they're young, they're not all that expensive.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to say, I love the effect of these plants in the garden. This is just another example. This is out Meadowlark Gardens, where they've done, again, I think, a wonderful plant combination using a lot of the same plants that you're using in your black garden.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, that Pennisetum rubrum, which again, I think almost is that black color, we should also mention, that's a what I'd call a tender perennial.
Yes.
They don't make it through the winter time here. But on the foreground, you know, I think they even put that little bit of that agastache, a little bit of orange in there. Just, again, wonderful texture. And there we are combining and adding a little bit of flower color as well.
And the hummingbirds, the agastache is their favorite plant. Just,
Yeah.
I say hands down, it's a southwestern plant, not always coming through our winters, but blooming all summer long and loves the heat. Lovely, lovely plant.
Yeah. So again, just here we're looking at a couple combinations you can do where you actually bring that really dark element in there, but with striking contrast.
Right, and this is the again the old variety, Colocasia Black Magic, down at Green Spring Gardens with Salvia Limelight in the fall. And I just, look at how black that leaf is, and that salvia is one of the has a light calyx before the blue flowers come out. So there again is that type of combination where you use a very light leaf or light, in this case, a floral spray against that black, dark leaf, and that just is very striking.
It is, because I found a lot of times when I first started playing with dark colors, and how they can just disappear in the shade if you don't work with some contrast on them.
But at the same time, they give a three-dimensionality. I think they actually. I mean, it's not that we're having a flat garden and it's two-dimensional, but that darkness gives you, almost like an imitation of shade, and it gives a very dynamic look to the garden. I'm a big fan of dark leaf plants.
Yeah, and I think you found some innovative ways to dress that up as well.
Yeah.
Let's look at this.
Oh, well, yes, I did. So I did a lecture at Virginia Tech a couple years ago that was called The Dark Side, and I did all kinds of experimentation, and this is actually embroidery thread sewn into the leaf. And my initial thought about sewing it into the leaf, especially on the one where I've gone all the way around the leaf, was that the leaf would just tear, that the wind and the way that the wind would catch the leaf would make the whole thing shred. But surprisingly, it didn't happen, and the thread stayed in there all the way through the whole leaf, falling apart and falling to the ground. So if you really want to be creative and try this, I think it's a lot of fun, and I think it has real potential.
I think it's plant brutality.
Oh,
Can't believe that you're doing this.
Plant torture.
Yes.
I don't know.
Okay, well, we're going to have to take a little commercial break, but when we come back, we'll see what other ideas Karen has for us.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Well, Karen's been sharing a lot of interesting ideas how to use foliage color, particularly dark colors in our garden, and we'll just pick up where we left off.
All right. So we do have this wonderful photograph, and this was actually from down at Virginia Tech. And this is the fountain grass is Pennisetum cetaceum without the rubrum. So it's the black grass that we know as a tender perennial. This one is, again, a tender perennial, but without the rubrum, so it's just the green form of it, which hardly anybody ever plants because it's tender. But it does really throw out these inflorescences, like, thick and all through summer and lovely. And then at the base of that is the sweet potato vine, the Ipomea, which is blacky, which is really, again, I'll go back, I love these black foliage plants. And there's just this bit, just a tiny bit of like a purple pink to the inflorescence on the grass, which is picked up by the sweet potato vine. So it makes for a great combination that will look good, months and months and months, and love the heat and just do very well all summer long.
And that's one of the things I've noticed with these plants too, is like mentioning the summer heat, while a lot of other things are sort of suffering in our garden, these just thrive. So I think that's another plus,
we
another
live
selling
in a great
point now.
climate for tropicals. They do very well for us. We get hot, we get humid.
Sure do.
So,
let's see what else is coming up here.
Now, the Alternanthera is one of my very favorites to add, and we have a couple different varieties at Merrifield, and you can get them tall, you can get them short and low growing. The surprising thing that I learned recently, like within the last couple of years, they make great cut stems, filler. You can put them in a vase and they will last just like your best as far as vase life goes, any other flower, but it's just the filler. So I was really surprised. I went to a cut flower nursery, basically, that's what they grow, and he was growing it, and so I asked, and there it was, a great plant for cutting. So consider it, if you're growing it, as a filler in a vase. And we have another plant, Suitor Anthem, which we do have some at Merrifield. Sometimes this plant's hard to find, but it has really nice dark leaves. So it makes for a great filler in the dark or black garden, and also makes for a nice contrasting plant just in the garden. It is another tender, basically tender perennial or almost tropical plant. So it isn't one that you're going to be able to winter over outside, but you can certainly either take cuttings, or it's not such a big plant that you couldn't think about bringing it into the house.
Right, now this is probably a good time for me to mention that we do put the outlines of the show on our website. So if you lose track of some of these plants and plant names, because you're bringing a lot of different things in here, you can always go to merrifieldgardencenter.com, and under our TV show on the website there, you'll find a copy of the show outline. So hopefully you're taking notes here and you're getting names, but if you get lost...
Or else just come and ask me.
Exactly, or come down and see Karen.
I'll be glad to show you these plants.
Right. So let's go back, look at some of these other specific plants that we can use. Now, I fell in love with this composition. This was down at the Lewis Ginter Botanical Gardens. And down there they were using this eucalyptus, or the pineapple lily, so extensively, and I fell in love with that plant. Tried it again, so I tried it in my garden, and I planted 3 of them. All 3 of them died over the first winter, but you said you've been successful getting them to come back year after year. Yeah,
I have. I mean, they are borderline for us, so it almost requires sort of microclimate or someplace that, and they're bulbs, so you could mulch it heavily or deeper just to protect it a little bit from the frost line. But I've actually had it come back for several years and had great luck with this plant. I love this plant.
Yeah. Now, I think you told me, do we have these in stock right now,
I'm not sure.
Not? I don't think we have these available. Sure, yeah. But because it is a little bit tender, though, like I said, with the proper care and microclimate, I guess some people are more successful than I have been with it.
Yes.
But I love that, and then of course contrasting the white phlox there in the background, giving that really black and white kind of look in the garden.
Yeah.
And let's see, I want to show another picture showing sort of an overall composition where you can start combining the light and dark elements. Yeah, so this was at Green Spring Gardens down in Alexandria. Again, I think I love visiting public gardens and seeing where they come up with these really creative color combinations. And again, you see that sweet potato form both in sort of the chartreuse as well as the dark color that's in there. So that's a plant that gives us a lot of utility. Now, I've had some people, again, they actually form a sweet potato, a tuber in there, and they've been able to overwinter that as well.
Huh, I haven't tried. The plant is relatively inexpensive. The tubers they make are gigantic. You know, so you have to almost watch how you put them in a container, because they'll take up so much of the container. But it grows like crazy. It seems like it grows inches a day.
Yeah, it does, and gives us that fantastic element of color. Now, we got a couple minutes left. You brought some plants in that we wanted to show.
We brought a lot of dark leaf plants, and I did actually bring a couple of the alternantheras. So here's one of them that grows a little bit taller, and then I have another one that's very low and mounding. And so you see, how nice and dark these leaves are. And these, like I said, will thrive in our summers. So they'll grow, readily and fill, and they are tender. So these are something that you would need to buy and replace or take cuttings.
Sun or shade?
Well, sun is their favorite place, although they can definitely take, a half a day of shade. They don't have a problem with that. The redder that, the more sun they get, the darker they are, the redder they are, where they'll green up a little bit if they're in less than, say, 6 hours of sun. And there are perennials that have very dark leaves. This is one of my very favorites. This is Euphorbia blackbird, which is lovely. And as far as perennials go, we have heucheras that have dark leaves. We have Eupatorium with dark leaves. If you just go to the nursery and you just walk through the perennials, you can just target all those dark leaf plants. And you can find some in shade, you can find some in sun. So you could actually build, a very dark or black leaf garden using quite a few perennials. Although I think that you'll find that filling it with some of the more tropical plants would be more satisfactory because they just really give you the punch of that darkness, that blackness, not to mention the size of those leaves on some of those colocaceae are just so wonderful for summer. They have a tendency to sort of wave at you in the garden, and I've actually caught myself looking over thinking somebody was waving at me because this is the way the leaves move, and it just makes me laugh to have a plant do that for me.
Exactly. Well, we're going to take a quick little break here, but when you come back, Karen's got more plants to show us. Look at all those flowers.
Yeah.
Well, today is a show without flowers.
Exactly.
So I hope you got to enjoy that little spot. And Karen, you have some more plants without flowers to show us.
I do. I have some lovely things. And again, in the line of perennials, we have a heuchera that's called Blackout. And this one is new to us this year, but it's lovely. And it has the dark leaf. There's a few. Obsidian is another one that's perennial that has very, very, very dark leaves. We also, and I didn't mention the Coleus, so there's a lot of really dark leaf Coleus, and I love to use these in the dark garden. And it's getting seemingly easier and easier to find these really incredibly ornate leaves on the Coleus, as well as these dark colors. So these work very, very well. And then I wanted to point out a Eupatorium, which is another perennial that's dark leafed, and this one can do partial sun. It does have white flowers in the fall, and it is actually, Eupatorium is native, but this leaf on this one, which is chocolate, is very, very nice. And there's also some Simicifugas that can grow in shade that have dark leaves, like Black Negligee and Chocolate. Wonderful names that the hybridizers are coming up with. So there's just choices everywhere. If you really want to do something like that, it's very easy to do it.
Yeah. Now I should point out, of course, all these plants do flower, but we're just talking about selecting them for their qualities of their foliage. Exactly.
Right. If a plant has good foliage, you have a good plant.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, sure, exactly. I mean, I really take that to heart because, again, where I live, I'm in a shade garden, so I don't have the opportunity to plant a lot of real foliferous type plants.
Yeah.
So I do. Everything is based around selecting for the color and contrast and foliage.
Right, contrast.
And it works.
Remember contrast.
It does. And we've got some pictures here to give you examples of the type of compositions that you can put together. Again, I always like to give credit. This is out at Meadowlark Botanical Gardens. I frequently go by there. It's such a fantastic place, and encourage everybody to swing by there and get a chance. But I thought this was just a phenomenal example of the range and variety of color and texture you can get with just the foliage. So that Boston fern back there, that is a specific one, a golden variety, to bring out that yellow color that's in the leaf. Again, we didn't get a chance to talk about Caladium.
Right. Caladiums are tender tubers again. They're relatively inexpensive, and you can dig them up and store them and save them. They're a little easier than some of these others, but they give you, my gosh, in foliage they give you such variation. Some are just pure white. The speckling on this one with the red and the green, it's lovely, and they're related. And you can almost see that they're related to the colocaceae and the alocaceae. They're all aroids.
Yeah. And of course, I don't think we had a chance to mention the Hacanacola, the grass in there. That gives us that wonderful range of color and texture we can use in shade environments.
Yep, and wonderful grass, and it just moves. It has that lovely movement of grass, so I really do like it in the garden.
And another example here of the next picture, really showing how that dark leaf element comes into. Absolutely beautiful. Again, that's out Meadowlark. Give them kudos for the creativity in their compositions there.
So, and look at the gray even with the black leaf. What wonderful contrast you have there.
Yeah. And I love the little beaded glass in there, adding that little element to the design as well. So that's what's so great going out there and visiting these fantastic combinations. Next picture shows again where they're using the exact same concept of everything that we've been talking about, but in containers. So this, you've mentioned several times how well these plants do in containers, but take this same idea and go outside the garden with it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It will be a much easier container to take care of without all the deadheading and pinching like you might do with something that's very floral.
Exactly, and that's the Queen Anne's lace that's in there, you know, with the Pennisetum rubrum, the grass we've been talking about, and the dichondra that's hanging down over there. So again, we have sort of that black and white color scheme going.
Right, with a little gray.
Exactly. So it's in the landscape, it's in containers, it can be in floral arrangements, which we'll see coming up here.
Yeah, this was actually, I took some of the cuttings from what I had out in my dark garden, my black garden, and the canna that you see flowering is called Australia. There's a lot of really wonderful dark leaf cannas, which we really haven't mentioned. They will sometimes winter over. I do, though, just to ensure that I'll have them for the next year, I dig up the big rhizomes. They're very, very easy to store. The little red berries that you see at the base are red. These are one of the hot peppers. So you can go and actually, even in vegetables, find dark-leafed plants. They're a little more on the ornamental side than on the edible side, but putting those dark-leafed pepper plants into the black garden works very, very well. As we all know, they love the heat and grow, you know, very strongly with that. And the alternanthera is in there as a cut, you know, filler in the vase. So I love to use the dark-leafed plants, especially when they're going to have these red flowers, because that's quite a punch. Or red berries in the black garden.
And I think we have one more picture to again, bring home the message. This
was at Green Spring, too, and, you know, they do some brilliant things there. This is a panicum, an ornamental grass that is, panicums are native. This is North Wind, a Rick Dark hybrid. North Wind has this great stamina, but also for standing up, which is why it was named what it was, but it's the color, that real wonderful bluish color, contrasted with one of the darker leafed cannas. And as simple as it is, it's wonderful. It's very, you know, pleasing to the eye and very low maintenance. So this is something to think about, is actually to use these ornamental grasses that are perennial and then add one of these dark leaf plants to that you're using for foliage.
Great. Well, great examples of how to use that leaf element and dark colors in your garden and your compositions. We're going to take a commercial break, and then we'd love to hear from you. If you want to give us a phone call for ideas or questions, or, you know, just say hi, we'd love to hear from you. Phone numbers on your screen there, 703-387-1046. We'll be back in just a minute. Thank you for joining us on Merrifield's Gardening Advisor. This is part of the show where we'd love to hear from you, so please give us a call with any of your comments, questions that you might have today. So that's 703-387-1046. And let's see, we have our first caller already here. Laura, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Well, thanks for watching this morning. How can we help you?
I bought a Sansevieria, and I know that they don't need much water, but it doesn't have the kind of leaf that looks like it would wilt like a normal plant would. So how do I know when to water it again?
Now that would be a great plant for the dark garden that we didn't talk about.
Yeah, that would be a great contrasting plant, and they do great in the garden in the summer. You can actually plant them outside. But I know exactly what you're talking about with that leaf. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't whimper. It doesn't pout. You have no way of knowing that it needs water or what it needs. But the best way I know of, and I think that's how all nursery people, you know, learn to know if a plant really needs to be watered, is wait. If you pick up the plant, that's one way, is to know if the soil is moist or it's not, because the water content will make it a little heavier. And the other is just to feel around in the soil and to get a sense about if there's moisture, if it's dry. I mean, they do like it more on the dry side, so it can actually get dry in the container down a couple of inches. And it's true, you know, the more sun that they get, the more water they might need. But it is hard to know with that plant, because it isn't a soft leaf that will you know, flag on you and then let you know that it really needs water. So I would go by weight, and then I would actually, you know, feel around in the soil and get a sense about that. The more you have it in like a shadier place in your house, not by a window or anything, the less it will need water. And it's almost impossible for us to be able to tell you how often, because there's temperature, You know, there's light, there's all those factors. But weight would be one thing. Learn when it's moist by weight. You know, whenever you water a plant, get a sense of its weight in order to know how to water something like that, the Sansevieria.
Should it be sort of lightly moist?
Definitely.
Or basically dry?
It wants to be more on the dry. If you're going to air anyway, do not air on the moist side, air on the dry side.
So just kind of pick it up, and if it gets feeling real light, then give it a little water.
Exactly.
Yeah. Laura, that's one of the 5 house plants that I own, so you know it's tough, and it prefers neglect.
Yeah, that's true.
Whatever requires care and attention, I don't have it.
Yeah,
I bought it in mid-April and gave it some water then, and I haven't watered it since. So
it might be time to give it a little bit of attention.
Okay.
Yeah, and sometimes you can.
We're already into June.
Sometimes you can feel the leaf and feel it'll be very sort of turgid or stiff versus a little softer. That helps too, especially with succulents.
Okay. Well, good luck with that, Laura. Thanks for giving us a call this morning. And our next caller, I'm sorry I missed your name, but I know Eve?
Yes.
Is that? Oh, Eve, how are you doing today? Calling in from Silver Spring. Yes. How can we help you?
I have a strawberry patch.
Okay.
And for the last few years, I get woody, like little tree growing in different section of it.
Right.
We try to dig them out, but it's going all the way to China, so we couldn't. We kept on cutting it. I am wondering if I could put brush killer, or would that? I believe it might come from a tree that I have in the back. Got several trees, and one of them just keep on. I guess the root coming through.
Right. So if I understand you, this tree you have, it's sending suckers from the roots up through your strawberries. Do you happen to know what type of tree that is?
No.
No, not at all. Well, Eve, the only thing I know to do about that, and here's the problem, is any treatment you do to those suckers could possibly be injurious to the parent tree that's there. There's a stump and vine killer where you would cut that sucker that's sprouting up through the strawberries, you would cut that off and then paint the stump and vine killer directly on the exposed cut. But I would tell you there is a risk of that causing some injury to the parent tree. So I'd feel better if we were able to identify the parent tree and have a little more information from you to begin with. But did you know of any other way to deal with that problem, Karen?
No, I don't know. That's, yeah. Sometimes when a tree does that, isn't that a sign of poor health, or that it's trying to recover from damage?
It could be a stress reaction from the tree that's forming those suckers, but there's others, like Bradford pears and some of our cherries and ash trees, and that locust trees, that's just their natural growth habit. So there's ways around it, but if you could ever stop by or contact us at the garden center or email a picture into me, I'd like to identify the tree species first, but then probably what we're going to be talking about is cutting that and doing a brush killer on that exposed cut.
So I shouldn't do anything right now?
I'd feel better. Like I said, we can help you with that, but I'd like to have an ID on the tree to start with. Because, like I said, there's a risk of doing some damage to the parent tree.
So would it be taking a branch and bringing it over?
That would be perfect. Yes, exactly. And then, like I said, we'll kind of coach you step by step on how you can manage this problem. Okay. But there are ways to do it, so that's the good news.
Okay. Right. What's the best mulch for the strawberry?
A lot of people like using straw mulch or even the pine straw because it stays dry, it keeps the fruit up and elevated, keeps it clean. Yeah, so I'd say you just pine straw or even just regular straw.
Yeah, I use straw in my strawberry patch.
Yeah, years ago I used that, but I neglected it a little bit.
Okay, yeah, time to freshen that up.
Okay.
Right. We're going to have to take a commercial break, but thanks for giving us a call. Okay. Well, again, we're going to take a break right now, but we'll be back in just a minute with more of your phone calls and gardening questions. Okay, we're going to get right back to your phone calls, and we have Helen calling in. Good morning, and how are you doing today, Helen?
Fine, thank you. What I'm looking for is a name of a fast-growing and tree for privacy that's deer-resistant.
Okay.
40 years ago, I had a dozen white pines. I have probably 3 left, maybe 4, and they've left all this missing space so that the neighbor's house is almost on top of me. So if I could have the name of a fast-growing tree that's deer-resistant, that would take the place of all of this space here.
Right. Well, the very first thing that comes to mind for me, of course, is the green giant arborvitae. They grow very rapidly. You can get 3, even 4 feet a year growth on them once they get started. They're dense, evergreen, and like I said, deer resistant. So that's first on my list.
Okay, I'm writing that down. Green giant.
Green giant arborvitae. Do you have other suggestions, Karen?
You know, I know the deer will rub a lot too, so you have to be careful about the rubbing on anything that you plant fresh, other than even just their feeding. But this is more your territory than it is mine.
And I've often said, you know, in the past now, Helen, I'll say Nellie Stevens holly has been a very vigorous, fast-growing evergreen. But you know, this past winter, we had deer browsing and feeding on. It's like they took our do not eat list and just went down the line there. So that's the thing I'm going to say, Helen. We're talking about deer resistant because I was still going to put Nellie Stevens holly on that list, but this winter the deer were just brutal, eating everything.
Right.
Including even like that.
Well, and
Nellie
cryptomerias
Stevens.
used to be wonderful, but the deer eat them now.
Yeah, exactly. Cryptomeria would have been a good choice.
Oh, and how do you spell that third one?
Oh. You're the speller.
Cryptomeria. Cryptomeria.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, Karen catches all my spelling errors each week when she's on, so I wasn't even going to try. Yeah, so there's 3 of them for you to think about, Helen. Thank you. Okay, and let's see. Abby is calling in from Upper Marlboro. How are you doing today, Abby?
Oh, fine, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
I am searching for an oxalis that is pink flower. It's a pinkish purple tiny flower with green leaves. I've seen the red oxalis, the burgundy, but I'm wondering if you carry it out at your stores.
We do.
We do? Do we
have it
that?
in perennials, yes.
Oh, good. I was going to say, because sometimes I've seen when we sell the corms in the store. You know, I have to say, our store, and this is great, we're so extensive in the store. I don't get out to the perennials, and Karen doesn't get in the store, and sometimes we don't know what each other has. So you do have that available in the perennials
Yes,
section.
we have it right now. So just call the Fair Oaks branch and then ask them to hold one for you. They were there yesterday. So we should be able... At the Fair Oaks, exactly.
All right.
Yeah, Karen, you can be there this weekend, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be there. I'll be there after
Abby,
the show.
just come in this weekend and ask for Karen. She'll help you out.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. That was an easy one.
Yes.
Good. It would have been difficult if you weren't here, so I'm glad you were.
Good.
Let's see him. Let's go to our next caller then. Barbara?
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning, and how can we help you?
Okay. I had talked to you, I think it was maybe in May, about my aloe vera plant that I had not watered since January.
Okay.
And you told me... And
I told you it's time to water it. I remember that conversation.
Yeah, you sure did, and I watered it, and it's doing well. Now I want to know how to repot it. What kind of soil? Is there any specific type of soil that I need to use?
Okay. Well, Karen, I'm sure you've grown aloe vera.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's your suggestion?
Well, they like good drainage, so they like a soil that drains well. You can actually buy soils that are specifically for succulent and cactus plants. So that's a thought. They like it tight in the pot. So, you know, if it's really root bound, that's one thing. If it's not, you don't really need to repot it.
Okay. Well, it's doing well. I mean, I just can't complain.
Yeah.
And then I watered it in May, and then I didn't water it again until maybe a couple of days ago.
Yeah, but I'm thinking, Barbara, this like Karen's saying, that the plant, if it's really gotten large in proportion to the pot. You know, we've had it since January.
Yeah.
It's probably about due to repot it. And I agree, one of those, it's not a fussy plant, but I agree one of those cactus succulent mixes would sort of be your best choice.
And it's a good time of year because there's going to be more growth this summer. And another idea is just to bring it into one of the Merrifields and say, is it time to repot this, or can I let it go? Simple as that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Good luck with that, Barbara. And we're going to try to fit in one more caller here. So, Susie, how are you doing today?
I'm fine. How are you?
We're doing great, but we're down to the last minute
I'll
here.
make it very quick. I'm trying to hide a neighbor's huge shed. I have spotty sun, and I'm wondering if Leland cypress would work.
To me, I'm thinking Leland cypress. I want to get at least about 5 hours of direct sun on there.
Yeah, that won't happen.
Yeah, now how tall does this ultimately need to be?
Well, this shed can hold 3 cars. It is huge. It's like a small barn.
Yeah. I'm thinking this might be a better job for hollies, and there's a lot of different hollies that you could utilize, but hollies would do well in that sort of part sun, part shade environment.
Okay.
Trying to think, a lot of times skip laurels, which are shrubs, but, they can get 10, 12 feet tall.
Okay.
If that's sufficient to give you the screening that you need.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for joining us. And Karen, thank you so much for being here with us today. Yep. And everything. These are great ideas. And like I say, Karen, you always come up with a sort of a different way of looking at things. And and now you're at our Fair Oaks store Saturdays, Sundays.
Friday,
right?
Saturday, Sundays.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah.
So certainly come down to visit us. Come down anytime that's there. And don't forget about the Rose Show, which is going on all weekend. That's going to be fantastic. And then, of course, next week I'm going to be away, but Peggy and Debbie will be back here, and they're talking about the magic of small gardens. And again, Peggy's always come up with these great ideas too. She's been on board these small gardens and fairy gardens for years. Yeah. Done some really amazing things.
Yeah, that should be a very good show.
Okay, so thank you for joining us this week, and we look forward to seeing you next Saturday as well.